So, what's the crack Irish Bodybuilding Podcast? So, we're in a good run of episodes. Like so far, there's been about 20 podcasts, over 7,500 views. So, genuinely thank everybody for kind of supporting the journey along the way here. Today, got another very, very special guest on. I've got Aimee Edwards. Now, Aimee was one that she competed for the first time in Bikini Masters in the First Timers Ireland show. She won the overall. She then competed in the Open over and won the overall there, and then went to the Universe and placed third. So, like, a pretty incredible first season, as well as her own coaching business and apparently into law as well. So she does all sorts. So, Amy, thank you for coming on.
No problem. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
So like, I kind of want to just sort of delve into like, obviously you're 36 and that's right. So like
Yeah.
that, your first competitive season, like what made
Mhm.
you want to go towards like competing?
The goal, did you say?
What made you want to go
Or what
towards
made me want to go?
competing?
Um, I don't know. Do you know, it almost like came out of nowhere. So I had done, obviously I'd always been into like training, I'd trained for ages. I'd done ballet for years. I'd always been really, really active. So it wasn't as if I was like a stranger to the gym or to training and, with bodybuilders in the family and things like that. So it was kind of like the lifestyle that I was sort of living already and was quite well used to. And then I had different photo shoots. And I had like different modeling contracts, things like that. And so I was always kind of like prepping for those things, getting content, stuff like that. So I'd gone through prep, numerous times, like over the past kind of like 5, 6 years, doing photo shoots for different stuff. And it was Peter Bennett actually that had done a lot of my shoots. And it was him that said to me, it was actually, I think it was it my last shoot about a year and a half ago? We came in really, really, really lean. And I was doing the shoot, and it was Peter Bennett that said to me, like, have you ever thought about competing? Like competing in bikini. You're pretty much there already. Like your condition and stuff, you'd probably do quite well. And so I was just chatting about it with him, and he kind of, I think he essentially planted the seed, in competing and stuff. So I think I just thought to myself, let's give it a go. But it wasn't something that I had ever, been involved in or really knew much about. And then I started looking, what it's like when you look through social media. So I was like scanning through Instagram, looking up like bikini competitors, looking up these shows, never even followed like PCA or anything like that. So I was like clicking into their page and like looking at their videos and stage shots and stuff. And I was like, oh, this looks really cool. I wonder, like, this is something I would absolutely love to do. And yeah, kind of just took off from there. I was with another coach previously, more of like a lifestyle coach, that would have just prepped me for the shoots, not really any competitive experience or anything. And left that coach whenever I decided that I was going to do the show. And that's whenever I kind of was like looking through, different coaches, trying to decide who would be best, who had good experience and good results. And Brian Ward obviously came out, on top for that, and linked in with him. And I remember the night that I spoke to Brian, and we spoke for a good while, actually, chatted through loads of stuff. And then we just decided, like, let's just go. We've only got a matter of months, but we're kind of in good condition already. So we'll just jump
Basically
ahead and do.
start that and then start into that prep,
Yeah.
see the coach and then go.
Yeah, so like, and that was tough. It was tough enough. People say to me like, how did you find it? But the like prep wise, but I had been doing so many shoots like back to back for a number of years. So of course I had like breaks in between. But whenever I went into competing, I was already extremely lean, and in very good condition. And my prep was only a matter of like a few months because I had already just come off the back of a prep for a shoot. So it wasn't overly difficult in that sense because it wasn't as if I had like a ton of fat, to strip off or anything. I was already lean. I was already good condition. So yeah, it only took us a matter of months, and I was coming off, several preps. So it was kind of already, in that diet phase, in that training, phase. Yeah. So it was easy enough,
So if
really.
you were starting in that lean position, like
Mhm.
what does prep then like look like for you over like what, an 8 to 10 week spell? Was it really?
Well, like altogether, it was like 4 or 5 months because we decided to. In my head, I was thinking, right, I'll do a first timers. Everyone has said to me, like, you've never done a show before, jump into a first timers show, kind of get a feel for it, and then do a few more shows after that. So we kind of used the first timers show as like, like a practice run, like just to kind of get the feel of it, and
Practice.
take away those nerves, basically. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we had planned, like in my head, I was thinking, right, I'll do the first timers. I think it was maybe Birmingham And I believe it was like a lot earlier on in the year. It was one of the first shows that PCA was doing. Yeah. And I was like, all go for that. And then after talking to Brian, Brian was like, you're already in good shape, but I was tiny. You know, I'm always quite like petite in that way. And he said, I reckon we could get still a good bit of size on you, you know, if your body is as responsive as you say. So let's push out and do the first timers. I think it wasn't it the end of April I did the first timers in
28th April,
the
I think
Ireland one.
And then
So we pushed by I think it was like 6 weeks or 8 weeks or something. So we cancelled the Birmingham show and went for the one in Derry, the first timers in Derry, and we managed to put actually a good bit of size on for, you know, considering the length of time that we only had. So we started off the prep doing that.
Sorry, during that prep, you were basically like actually growing into it. You were
definitely, yeah. So people had said, like, you know, the way people say, oh, there's no way, like you can't really grow in prep. You know, it's not something you can do. You know, you're hitting straight into a diet phase. You're stripping fat. Your calories are low. You're not really going to gain much muscle in prep. But Brian and I were like, look, I know my body, and I know my body's very responsive. Like I can grow quite quickly, quite easily, thankfully. So we just started the prep and we decided, let's just, you know, put the calories way up. Let's eat, let's train hard. And yeah, that's what we did for about 6 or 8 weeks. And then we kind of started to strip, and we gained a good amount of size, you know, in those 8 weeks. But our calories were through the roof. Like I was hitting like 4,000 and 5,000 calories a day. At the beginning of prep, you know, and that kind of lasted the whole way through. You know, people were always asking me, like, what are your calories on? Is this not a really hard process? Like, you're not, you know, starving yourself? But my body just seems to like rip through calories like there's no tomorrow. It's crazy. So even like the whole way throughout my prep, right up to peak week, like there were numerous days I was still eating, you know, 4,000 calories a day.
Yeah, it's
really.
a lot. I mean,
which is a lot for a girl of my size.
Like people say you can't grow in prep, but it's always very context dependent. You know what I mean? If we call it prep, then like it's a diet phase, but obviously if you're coming from a super lean position, you have that time frame. There's for some people as well, PEDs involved. Like there is the opportunity, especially in early stages, to get growth out of it. But you know, if you're coming from quite a heavy position, then it's unlikely they're going to be doing too much growing. They're going to be doing a lot of
because your focus is going to be stripping that fat. But no, we were like, you know, we were lucky enough. Obviously, we put the work in. You know, the training was extremely heavy, and even when I started prep, you know, I thought, you know, whenever you think you can train hard and you think you know what you're doing, and we completely changed the training. You know, I remember the first time, my first check-in with Brian was like, do you know, don't just send me photos, like, can you send me a few videos of you training? And I was like, yeah, sure, send it through. So in the dock, you know, working away, getting the tripod out, sending videos through, thinking Brian's going to think I'm class. Like, you know, I trained so hard. And the message I got back, he was literally like, what the hell are you doing?
So that's interesting. Like, how did the training differ for you? Because, you know, obviously you've been about the gym training for a long time. So how did that differ to when you actually got sort of linked up with somebody?
Yeah, so it was really different. I think it was a lot of my training was very like, you know, full body sessions, really intense, really high cardio. Like I lived on the Stairmaster, which looking back on it now is why I was so tiny. You know, in my head, every training session that I did, I had to do, you know, an hour on the Stairmaster prior to my session starting. And like I wasn't even in prep. That was just like a norm for me. You know, I just thought this is what I have to do to stay in shape. And, you know, I was blasting that out, which obviously isn't ideal. You know, you're not going to grow if that's what you're doing every single day, especially when you're not in prep. And then the training sessions, as I said, they were like full body sessions. So there was no real focus, you know, on particular muscle groups or having like a push or a pull or a back day or, you know, a leg day or whatever. I was just going in and just blasting it and just doing everything, every single session, wondering why I was so tiny and so tired. And then as well as that, I think it was like my form, obviously, and stuff as well. Although I'd been training for a long time, I didn't really have, you know, like proper direction or like a real mentor type thing. So I was just blasting away, doing it whatever way I sort of thought was the right way to do it. I definitely wasn't training to failure. Form definitely wasn't where it could have been or should have been. So those were massive things that I learned. And then it was Brian, you know, I said to Brian about, you know, getting PT sessions in. Brian's obviously lives a good way away from me, so it wasn't possible to meet up with him all the time. And then we talked about being trained by somebody, and that's when we linked in with John Martini. And then that's when John and I met, and it was him that, I did my first session with him, and it was a leg session. And I was literally just like, oh my God, like, this is how you train legs, this is how you train properly. And, it was John that taught me, like, this is how you go to failure. Like, you need to go to that place, all of those things. And then from there, my physique just took off, with that proper direction from the both of them. So, yeah.
I mean, it's interesting because, like, I think, once you have that direction and a bit of an intent behind it,
Yeah.
it becomes pretty smooth sailing. Once you learn that skill, because it is definitely a skill, training to failure as well. Do you know what I mean? So once you have that in your books, it kind of goes from there. Like, so what does the training look like now? So what is your training currently looking like?
So training's actually changed again recently. So just last week there, Brian put a whole new training split in for me. So I was doing 5 days on with like 2 rest days normally during the week, but we've actually pulled that back a good bit. So we are now training like 4 days with 3 days rest. And we've been doing that, I think it's about 1 or maybe 2 weeks. And it's been amazing, like the changes I have seen from that. So with having those extra rest days for me, like, it's just, my body's just been a lot more responsive. I'm not as tired. And whenever you get to that point where you nearly feel like you're in like a bit of a stalemate, you're thinking like, I'm training the way that I was previously and it was working. I'm doing all the same things, but I felt like things had just kind of taken a bit of a stop. Like, I wasn't progressing, whether or not that was in my head. But when I was looking at myself, I was like, I don't feel like I'm gaining the same way that I was. So Brian and I talked about it, and we changed it up. So now we're just 4 days on and 3 days off. And some of the sessions have changed. We're focusing particularly on delts and glutes and having sessions, dedicated to those areas. And it's been really, really good. So the progress we've seen in the past couple of weeks has just been mad.
And that's interesting. That's what I love about like training as well, and how individual it can be. It's like somebody in your body type there is so used to like basically hammering themselves, which I think as a coach is it's a nice refreshing mentality to get somebody with, because it's easier to scale. Well, sometimes it's easier to scale somebody back than it is to like put a rug up there forward. But that's obviously a big movement from you, from doing an hour in a Stairmaster, full body, smashing yourself, to pulling it back to 4 days a week.
Yeah.
Obviously, again, with your body type, actually that extra rest and putting more calories into that right area make a massive, massive difference for you, and allowing yourself to, probably, especially with your schedule too, having that extra is going to make a massive difference.
Exactly, yeah. So rest is up, food is up a good bit. So we're sitting at about 3,000, just over 3,000 calories a day, which again is a lot, for someone of my size. And we're still hard, we're still lean, everything's still good. So there's not a whole pile of fat there, and there's still a bit of growth. So.
Well, I've seen them recent progress photos you put up, like, and obviously the condition is still very good. Like, I remember seeing you at the PCA posing seminar. It was on a panel.
That was Derry, wasn't it? That was a good while ago.
That was a month before your show, maybe 6 weeks out, and I looked at you and thought, "Fuck me, there's the winner." You've seen it enough to enough people to know that this person's going to be very.
Yeah, by looking straight away who has the potential and stuff. No, we've always, like I said before, like I stay pretty lean, all year round. I'm lucky enough to do that, and I still do grow. I still do put on size. I just don't. I don't have to put on a massive amount of fat while I do it, if you know what I mean. It's the way I train, and then all the genetics and stuff like that as well. Like, I'm just lucky in that way, which is good.
What were your hopes for this season? Like, did you see it going as well as it did? Like, what was your aspirations when you went into this season?
So, and do you know what? This is a funny one, because we were actually looking at my, Brian Ward's like the dashboard thing that we fill out. You'll know yourself anyway. And then the front page of it is like, your initial goals whenever you first join, like, what is it? And I was scrolling through the other day, and the first page, I think it said like your goal, or your long-term goal, or your immediate goal, or whatever it was. And mine was overall bikini champ, get a sword in capital letters. And that was, from the first evening of talking to Brian, months and months ago. So like, in my head, I was literally like, well, if I'm going to do this, like, I'm going to do it properly. You're in it to win it type of thing. And that's just the way, I don't know, it's the way my personality is. Like, I'm so competitive, as, I'd say most bodybuilders and athletes are. But I knew in my head, I was like, if I'm going to do it, I want to do it properly. So I was literally like gunning for that sword. That's what we wanted. You know, that's the goal that we had in mind the whole time. Just bringing my best. You know, there was no way I was going to do that show and walk away and be like, oh shit, you know, if I hadn't had so many sneaky off plans, or
Yeah.
if I hadn't skipped the gym or whatever. So I knew regardless, I was going to push, you know, to exactly what I wanted to do and needed to do. Like I was going to bring my best regardless. But yeah, Brian and I said it every single day. We're taking the sword, we're taking the class win, we're taking the sword. That's what we're doing. And Brian was like, you know, let's just do this at, you know, both of the shows. So
Brian
yeah,
is a good way of, it definitely is a good way of instilling like confidence. And I don't think
yeah.
it's place confidence as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think as a coach, this is personally like I think you need to be honest with a client, you know. So if you get somebody like yourself,
Yeah.
like this is a possibility. But
Mm-hmm.
like so much the coaching industry as well is like people are very keen to blow smoke up somebody's arse a little bit as well. Maybe just to spice them in. You know, I think with somebody, because like with yourself there, you went the first timers, won the sword, and then each got progressively more, I suppose, more challenging because you went into the open classes and then the universe. Like by the time the universe, was that like I'm going to win this sword?
Yeah, so like first timers, I was obviously really nervous because I've never been on stage before, you know, and it was never like a world that I'd, you know, been involved in, or, you know, I'd actually never even watched a bodybuilding show before. First time that I ever went to a bodybuilding show was me on stage taking the overall. So like it was all, you know, you're just blinded by lights. So I was like, what is this world? Like this is class. And in my head, I was like, I finally found something that I'm actually good at, you know, and that somewhere that I actually fit in, like with people that I'm like, these people are like me, you know, and I loved it. So first time a show, pure nerves, you know, obviously, like I remember going on stage and I could not control my heart rate. Like it was,
I know.
I was literally like, oh my God, I can't breathe. But we nipped it in the bud and we were grand. Like obviously we did a good job. Irish Open, obviously the nerves had settled. I was a hell of a lot more confident on stage. I've always been confident in the physique, and then like the posing and stuff as well. Like with Emma sponsors me and she's absolute godsend. So I was confident enough in that as well. By the time we got to the universe, yeah, I mean, definitely the goal was, you know, I was like, could, you know, in my head, I was thinking, could this happen? I was a little bit less unsure about the universe because I knew the standard was going to be a lot higher. Like, obviously, it's going to be higher than the first timers or the open, you know, your local shows. So I was expecting that. But in my head, I was like, I do think we could do it. You know, it was there, you know, the possibility was there. And Brian and I were realistic. We were thinking it's going to be tough, but I think we can. By the time I got to the universe, like that was my third peak week, nearly back to back, those peak weeks in a row. Like we were tired, we were definitely fatigued, and we knew that we were already in condition, but we wanted to drive it further just for that universe. We lowered calories right down. And then even in, you know, like the day before and the day of the show, the water was completely pulled, and it was a difficult one, like it really was. But I mean, we still went top three. We obviously didn't take the sword. Sort of felt like the pro cards slipped through my fingers at that show, but like I was still proud nevertheless because I was so new. Yeah.
I think
And still went top three. And the girls that, you know, beat me, they were, you know, they were unreal. They were absolutely stacked, like the size of those girls. And even though that was sort of like my, albeit top three or whatever, that was my worst placing, you know, in the season. But it was the show that I probably learned, you know, a hell of a lot from. I learned the most from. Yeah, it was probably the most beneficial show that I did the whole season.
it's not a bad thing. I know that sounds, it's easy to say that at the time, but I don't think it's a bad thing as well. Like that's a first season, right? Obviously, it's a phenomenal first season. You should be super proud of yourself, but potentially going in and then sweeping, you know, the overall air, getting the pro card at that, like having a little bit of hunger there to come back again and be like, right, that's fucking mine. Like that's the main goal.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think it's a bad thing because as you say, the show you learn from, it's probably not the wins all the time. You know, it's when you're against standard
Exactly. Yeah, and I learned the most from that show because, you know, not only physically, like you're seeing the girls, you're seeing the standard, you know, of these people that have qualified for a show like the Universe, you know, and these girls, majority of them are, you know, very experienced. They've been in bodybuilding for years. They've come up through the ranks. They're now in Masters. You know, they're very mature in their thinking and in their muscle mass, you know, and physically as well. So it was good for me to see, you know, what that standard looks like, you know, so that first place, you know, second place, the girl who took the pro card, So in my head, I was like, right, well, I now know exactly what I have to aim for, what those international judges are looking for, and what kind of sizes are the norm for that class, and are the top placers in that class. So yeah, learned a hell of a lot. And then as well as that, like you can't win every single show, yourself. It's not possible. I mean, you can be absolutely phenomenal bodybuilder and athlete. You're not going to win every single overall that you enter. It's just not possible. You don't know who's going to turn up, or what way your peak is going to go, or what you're going to look like on that particular day. So it was good for me to almost have that bit of a knockback, because it taught me, because I went, 2 shows, winning the class, winning the overall, and you nearly become a little bit complacent, and you think like, oh my God, I'm so good at this. Like I'll take this, no bother. And you're not pushing as hard, you're not driving as hard, because you think it's already yours. So for me to be kind of pushed back a little bit, to 3rd place, taught me a hell of a lot, and it gave me absolute hunger, like you wouldn't even know. And I think if I had taken everything in the first season, then I wouldn't have the same drive that I have now, to return and to level up. I probably would have been like, my physique's fine, let's just go again, looking like this. So yeah, learned loads. Like, I'm grateful.
Being the underdog's good. Get into it. It gives you that little bit of fire in your stomach too. Like, you raised an interesting point there, actually, about like the actual Masters Bikini in general as well. I want to like, okay, if you can look and go, right, why did I get beaten in them shows? Because that's what we're always going to do as an athlete or as a coach, and go, right, where did they beat me? But I find the Masters Bikini interesting because it's kind of like almost a different look than.
Oh yeah, totally.
Bikinis. It's like it nearly looks almost figurish.
Yeah.
Sorry, you know the word I'm looking for.
Figurish.
It's a little bit harder. It's actually like bikini. I can take or leave, if I'm honest with you. But like with the bikini, it looks more bodybuilding-esque. That's why I enjoy it more.
Yeah. No, definitely. And whenever I remember when I joined with Brian and we were talking through, like what class is going to suit us best, because although like, Masters, okay, you're over, what is it? You're over 35. They now have the split for over 45, but it's not just about what age you are. So you're going to have girls that are over 35 that are still, going down and doing bikini.
Yeah.
But for me, it was the look. So I train really hard, and I like that look of being, that grainy look, that dry look, being, extremely hard. And that's the look that I have and can achieve quite easily. But I don't have, the structure and the massive size, for like figure or athletic or, things like that. So I was sort of like, I'm too hard for bikini, because, those girls are slightly softer, they're curvier, they're this, they're that, and I don't have the size for any of the other classes, further on up. So for me, Masters was perfect. It allowed me to continue to train and eat the way that I was, and look the way that I like to look and normally am, and still be within that bikini range, if you know what I mean. So yeah, I know it's a class that I absolutely love. I mean, even the athletes, the girls that I've met in those Masters categories are amazing. Some of those Masters girls are savage, like, so.
And they've been at it for a long time, a lot of them as well. As you say, there's that level of like maturity and density to their muscle.
Oh yeah, exactly. Even the way they think and the way they work and the way they approach prep and off season, compared to your younger, more junior athletes, and yeah, not just that, like the maturity in their mind, but the maturity in their muscle mass as well. It looks different. It's a look that I love, and it enables me to still drive hard and lift heavy and still remain in bikini, if you know what I mean. So. You get all the fun side without having to be huge.
What are the aspirations going forward then? Like, is it next year the plan again? And like, where are you? What's the goal?
Yeah, so we are currently, as I said there, we're currently in kind of like a growth phase at the minute. So we're off season, obviously. We finished there at the Universe. We're going to take 6-7 months, I think. And then we are going to go back into prep, I would say, end of December, beginning of January, depending where the physique takes us. Like, we'll see what we look like, and how long we need. But I would say we're aiming for like sort of mid to end December. And then we will probably go again May time. So we are looking at PCA, obviously, which, I love that federation. That's where I started. It's brilliant. And then we're looking at NPC for Two Bros direction as well. So we're going to run the two federations in the one season.
Because obviously, like within the NPC, the bikini girls are coming in that little bit harder. They're a little bit more muscular as well. So like, I feel like that's somewhere you could fit and do very well in that.
Yeah, definitely. It's evolved for sure over the years. Like, when you look back, especially at NPC, the girls were a lot kind of like softer, that kind of look. But as time goes on, and it's natural, like progression, you know what's going to happen. People come back every year and want to sort of upgrade their physique. So it's inevitable that that's going to happen in bikini, and it is, currently. So when you look at NPC, the girls are coming back, bigger, they're more muscular, they're rounded, they're hard. So yeah, it's definitely something we're going to go for, 100%.
Pro cards. Is that the thing? Get that.
I don't want to jinx anything, but yeah, like you sort of, we were talking there before about the universe, and I felt like, Brian and I, although like we were so proud of the universe because, first season, first timer, completely new to this world and this industry, and we placed top 3 at a universe against, like there was a mass, like the amount of girls in that class, they had to split us, there were so many, but there were like 15, 20 alone in my lineup, so to come top 3 there, we were so proud, but at the same time, there was a bit of heartbreak there because we were that close, and the pro card slipped through our fingers right in front of our eyes. And although I learned a lot from it, the friggin' I was pissed that evening. I really, really was. Well deserved by the girl that got it, absolutely class physique and lovely, lovely girl. But I felt like it slipped through my fingers. So yeah, I mean, I'd be a liar if I said I wasn't coming from that pro card. I absolutely am. That's the only thing in my sights at the moment, really.
I think it's very much on the cards, as is potential down the NPC as well, for 100%. Yeah. That's very much there. I want to ask you a bit about your off season, because you're obviously come out of prep 7 or 8 weeks post show. That must be now.
What are we now? I think I checked in. What day are we on? I checked in yesterday, and we were 8 weeks. I think it was 8 weeks post show. Yeah. So
health phase done. What does a health phase incur for you? What does it look like? And how do we transition into off season?
So health phase was basically just, pulling everything, pulling the Anavar out and pulling anything that we were running, any assistance at all. Did the norm, did the bloods, everything's clear. So we did that for about 7 weeks. Just, nothing in the system, just eating well, still had a diet plan, still eating clean, one off plan meal a week, whatever, or the refeed as we needed. Still training away, doing all of that. So yeah, I mean, it was a weird phase for me, really, because like obviously this is my first ever official off season or growth phase. I've never had any kind of structure like that before because I haven't been competitive before. So there was definitely struggles there, 100%. Coming from being stage lean and and whatever else to all of a sudden, not having the assistance in, not having any gear in there, looking soft or feeling like you're fatter or whatever, dealing with cravings. But, we got through it, no bother, obviously with Brian's guidance and John and stuff. So all good on that side. And then we are just sort of slowly implementing those things back in. So the Anavar's back in, and metformin, stuff like that. All of that's kind of being drip fed back in. So we'll see where it takes us.
A couple of points, if you don't mind, Aimee, I want to touch on there actually as well. I think it's interesting, especially for the girls listening, and it's really how open you want to be with that. Is like, what does PEDs look like for a bikini girl? We don't need doses, but what kind of like compounds and how are we mitigating certain factors with it?
Yeah, so and it's a weird one because I have found, obviously I'm very new to this world, I'm not new to training and not new to PEDs, but new to the competitive world and like the bikini world. And I have really found that like females in particular are very reluctant to talk about, what they're using, what assistance they're using, or dosages and things like that. You'll have so many girls out there that, I mean, we know ourselves what girls look like when they're assisted and what they're not. And, they will be like, no, I don't, or whatever. I don't know. I find it very strange. I just find that girls are just very reluctant. And, for whatever reason, it's fine. It's up to you. But there are not enough like sort of female bodybuilders out there that talk about PEDs and what that looks like, in particular for my category for a bikini girl, what the side effects are, what the implications are, what it's going to be like, specifically when you come off it and you enter a health phase or an off season, because there are struggles. It is extremely difficult, and the sort of side effects that you have, losing your menstrual cycle, all those types of things, moods, whatever, all those types of things that come with taking certain PEDs, nobody really seems to chat about or talk about in the female, bodybuilding world, which is a shame because it's stuff like that, in particular, junior, girls coming in or, girls that are new to the industry, we need to know these things, you need to make informed decisions. about what you're going to do, if you're going to be natural, if you're going to be assisted, or what that looks like when you come off that stuff or go on that stuff. And it is definitely a shame. So for me, I chose to be assisted. It was something, I had experience in PEDs before. I was quite knowledgeable on things like that. And I've learned a hell of a lot, in particular from John and from Brian. And I chose to be assisted and to run things that way, albeit not a hell of a lot. I mean, there's nothing drastic, but the norm, I mean, everybody knows the norm is going to be your Anavar, that most bikini girls will run if they're assisted. And then you're looking at fat burners, things like Clen and stuff like that, and whatever else you want to take. So in my head, I think as long as you are, for bikini class, I obviously, I don't know what else, in the higher classes, but for bikini, for me, as long as you are running relatively low dosages, over certain periods of time and then breaking and then starting again, that's the way to do it. But you're going to need guidance. Like, you're going to need a coach and a mentor to take you through it if you're not, experienced enough.
Well, that's great. I think that's why it's important to have, like as I said to you before the podcast, is I'm trying to get more females on here.
Yeah.
Open and honest. Obviously, had you and Nadia, and both like very open and honest with things as well.
Yeah.
Because like without that sort of knowledge out there, and somebody saying, "This is what I do. This is the precautions to take. This is how much."
Yeah.
It gives people a general idea, and then go to a coach that actually has that understanding of it as well. Otherwise,
100%.
you get stuck down a potentially like very dark and wrong path as well.
Oh yeah, totally. And you know what? Like, I've been there. When I first started out doing preps for photo shoots, and I would decide, oh, we'll take this, we'll take that, running far too much, like ridiculous amounts, for far too long. And I learned my lesson very, very quickly. And it was actually Brian Ward that stopped me in my tracks. When I started with him, he was like, what are you running? What are you taking? How much are you taking? The usual stuff that a coach will ask you if you're starting with them. And he was like, whoa, hold up here. And he changed my whole sort of PED cycle, and everything that I was taking in dosages and things like that. So I learned a hell of a lot there. But if it wasn't for Brian, God knows where I would be now, if I hadn't been stopped or educated properly, really, from him.
I think from a bikini perspective, there never feels too much more need than anything like other than like Anavar. I think like obviously you get your fat burners, etc. too. Girls potentially T3 and T4, but even at that, if
even like fat burners are a weird one, because not everybody needs the fat burners. And I would definitely give prep a go and see what your metabolism is like, see what way your body responds to the calories, and see how you cope, on very low calories, or if you need more, whatever. So for me, like Clen, that was fine. We put Clen in at a very low dosage, and we just kind of ran that, the whole way through prep. Grant probably could have done without it, but we had it in there anyway. I didn't touch T3, T4, none of that. Didn't really need it, and not everybody does. Some of these girls come in and they think, right, let's bang it all in, and you don't necessarily need all of that. A lot of it is diet related. But yeah, you're right. The Anavar, that's the main one. That's your primary one for a bikini girl, really.
And I think the big thing with females too is like that exposure time, as well as obviously dosing as well. The time of exposure is one of the big sort of things perpetrators of, like when you start seeing virilization, it isn't just the dosing as well. So again, like actually cycling on and off it, and like you said as well, like understanding like the trade-off on the back end, because whatever we do up and ending in life, there's you pay the piper somewhere.
Oh yeah, 100%. Even when you're running low dosages, in my opinion, I don't think a bikini girl needs any more than 10, 20 milligrams of Anavar. Running that, your 10 milligram, that is your standard kind of dosage for the norm, your normal bikini girl. And for me, that, you will grow on that, you will be hard on that, and that is enough, in my opinion, for that particular category. Even doing those, you can do the shows without the Anavar as well, as even outside of the naturals, you can go into the open classes and still be natural. You don't have to, but that is kind of, for me, that is the sweet spot. Your 10 milligram, running it over a certain period of time. But yeah, you have to be aware of what that's going to do. It's going to alter your hormones. It's going to alter your cycle. And you are going to have to go through a period of like recovery. When you pull that PED out of your system. It's inevitable, and you have to be aware of it. Even mood wise, hunger wise, there's a hell of a lot there to take into consideration.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and that's like, I would say I take the majority of my females bikini girls are like junior, and the majority of them, like we're doing that naturally to begin with, especially like it's very rare. Even I'll use like something like clenbuterol with a junior client, just more so the like, actually, let's see if you like this sport as well, because
Yeah, exactly. Before you start sticking stuff into your body, your bloodstream that you maybe don't need, you know.
and it's the same on the flip side for the guys too, like, because there's plenty of guys listening to this, is like the same way females have to come off, the same way guys have to come off, and often them shifts in hormone levels are that much greater too. So it's
Oh my
being
gosh, yeah.
understanding of that, like, but
Yeah.
you may want to get into actually a little bit, because you have so much other things going on too. Like, obviously, you're doing online coaching. You're also
Yeah.
getting 2 kids there, and you've got a
Mhm.
career in law, which you explained to me. But I'll be honest with you, I just know you heard law. I heard law, and I was like, oh, that must be good. So, like, how do you manage all of that around like your bodybuilding and your prepping and
Yeah. I know, like I feel like people look at my life and just think, oh my God, this bird has just absolute chaos. Her lifestyle's mental, but I think like there's actually nothing like when people say to me, "Oh my God, your life is you're so chaotic, like it must be insane." There's actually nothing chaotic about my life really, because I am so like structured and you know extremely routine driven, and I because I have to be. So it's not chaos, it's extremely organized and it's extremely structured, and that's the only way that I actually manage to do it and to get things done. So like you're talking, everything has to be a routine, you know, right down to like, when am I training? Every single training session has to be, you know, on that particular day at that particular time, because I will build everything else around. Do you know that? What time I eat my meals at, you know, exactly what meal it is, what time is it going to be at? You know, things like that. And then you're factoring in school runs, school pickups, my other full-time job, my coaching, which is at night. So as long as you have it structured, that's basically how I deal with it. So
yeah,
this is what I'm going to do at 8 a.m. That, you know, this is when I'm going to eat. This is when I'm going to train. This is when I'm going to work, you know, in the law side of things. This is when I switch off. This is when I put the kids to bed and feed them. Then I eat, you know, then I sit down, then I get the laptop. This is my coaching work block. You know, these are my check-in days with my own clients. And I stick to that like you wouldn't even know, you know, it's insane. So as long as I stick to that structure, then I will get everything done. You know, it's fine. And you get used to it, you know, you adapt, like you really do.
I think
Like,
bodybuilding forces you to be fairly routine and fairly organized. Like I
yeah,
was
of course.
like now, even like I was saying, prepping, and it's like
Mm.
everything becomes so much more focused, so much more stringent. This is my time. This is what I got to do, and like, I don't
Because
have.
you have to
And
be
it's not
like
over the law
it's like
either. But
survival mode. It's the only
yeah,
way you're going to get through it. You know, if you're all over the place and you're eating at different times and you're like, shit, I forgot this or forgot that, or oh, I'll train at this time, I don't feel like it, I'll train. You know, it's not going to work. You need to be in that structure. And you know, as you said, bodybuilders are like that. You know, let's be honest. You know, the majority of successful bodybuilders that you meet and that you see, they are OCD. I mean, I would say the majority of us are probably on the spectrum to some extent. Let's be honest. Like, you know, there's OCD. You know, we are like that. We're just very, very particular, and that to me, that's what makes, you know, a successful athlete, somebody has good results, because we're so particular. We're so OCD about stuff. We're so structure and routine driven. It's just the way that we are, and that's why we're successful.
yeah,
So.
yeah. I mean, that actually feeds into one of my questions. Like that, I sort of was wanting to sort of hear from you. Is like, give us 3 traits of a successful athlete. Like, what do you see, probably within yourself, that are like they're
Yeah.
fundamentals there. They're my
Mhm.
foundation.
Probably like this, as I said there, the structure, that's a massive one. You know, you need to be extremely organized and extremely structured and extremely like routine driven. It's the only way that you are going to be fully successful is if you have all those things in place. Another one is probably just, you know, competitiveness. So you're not, and it's not just about being an individual and being competitive against others. It's like competitiveness within yourself. So, like, I put this massive amount of pressure on myself, always have done, not just in bodybuilding, but in anything I really do. So, you are competing with yourself in everything that you do in every single season. You know, you're bettering yourself, you're upgrading your physique, you're upgrading your mindset and how you look at things, how you accept things, and how you learn and grow. And you need that extremely competitive mindset, not just against others, but primarily against yourself. You know, without that, in my opinion, you're not going to be overly successful. You're not going to be better basically every season, you know, every show that you do. So yeah, it's being extremely competitive in all aspects, I think. And then probably the other side of it is just being like an absolute psycho. Like you need to be a savage. You need to be able to have a high pain tolerance, because the training sessions that I have endured, in particular from John Martini, have made me realize that pain is a massive part of training. You cannot escape it, whether it's during a session or whether it's afterwards, and how your muscles and your body reacts and responds. You are going to be in pain, and you have to like go to that place. And train to failure, to true failure. And I think if you're going to be the type of person that is like, oh my God, this is too hard, or this is giving me a sore head, or my body's too sore, you're not going to cope well at all. You really aren't. So it's a massive one, definitely.
Yeah, bodybuilding's probably not for you then, if that's the case. I think that's the thing a lot of people realize is they start into it and go, whoa, this is not this wasn't the glitz and glam and the tan and the teeth that I thought it was.
Exactly. And especially bikini girls, like everybody looks at them and be like, oh my God, like you just want to be like a pretty girl in a sparkly bikini, like dancing on stage. And it's not that at all. It really, really isn't. And whenever you enter that world, you get this sort of shock reality that is literally like a minute part, of bodybuilding and of prep. It's just like a glitter on top. It's nothing compared to what you do in the background. You are going to be tired. You're going to want to give up a lot of times. You're going to be in pain. It's just the way that it is. You're mentally drained, and it's all part of it. It's just whether or not you think it's worth it, I suppose.
Yeah. And I can agree with all three of them sentiments, and in terms of them traits, like I think the organization is something I bought into massive this year. I got like it's cheesy whiteboard on the wall, and it's like just ticking it off.
I saw that. I bought one the other day off Amazon because I was like, oh my God, this is right up my street. Like Neil has this whiteboard and he puts it all out, and I was like, I need this in my life, so I ordered one.
You maybe need a bigger whiteboard than me, mine, but like it's very much helped me. It's especially in the direction of doing these sort of projects too.
Yeah.
Like, hold you to it. Do you know what I mean? Because there's a level of like anxiety and pressure I feel when I'm doing this. I'm like, this better be good. Like I think we should all have that in ourselves. This one is
totally.
And then in terms of that internal drive as well, because yes, you want to beat everybody. Sometimes that's like I go into this show, for example, this year, and I'm going, the likelihood is I'm not going to win this show, but I'll be damned if I'm going to be outworked or out conditioned, because there are factors out of my control. So I'll be happy with that. But you need that like internal drive every single day. And then, like you say, the psychopathic thing, this is something I'm actually interested to hear if this is from you. Like I attach every one of my preps to something. Do you know what I mean? So it always that little bit of a deeper focus. And like I wanted to not complain as well. This whole year I was like, no matter how tired, hungry you are, just don't complain, just laugh.
Don't complain about myself,
just sometimes been feeling real tired, dragging my feet, I'm just like laughing. It's like one of my like, is there anything for you that you sort of attached to when that last prep when things were a little bit tougher?
Like for me, it's a difficult one because I actually really love prep. Like I absolutely love it. And I suppose people will say in a way, well, your prep is not as hard as my prep. You don't have to starve yourself. You're sitting on 3,000-4,000 calories a day. But it's still, it's still difficult for everybody in different ways. Like just, like people think, oh my God, you're lucky you get to eat 4,000 calories a day. Like eating 4,000 calories a day at my size is by no means fun. Like I am force feeding on a daily basis. Like I am gagging food down a lot of the time. It's part of the process. So it's difficult in different ways. But for me, I see prep as like a distraction from everything else that I have going on. So yeah, everybody has their issues, like their personal issues and stuff going on at home and whatever else. Work for me is extremely stressful. The work that I do outside of coaching and outside of competitive bodybuilding, it's hard, like it's stressful. The cases that I deal with are hard. And prep was like my escape. So I didn't really have time to think about anything else. Because I was in prep. So I use prep as like a tool to take me away from the other things that I find hard in my life. It keeps me focused. It keeps me on a straight line. And it has, this like one particular goal. And I'm gunning for that one particular goal. And everything I do revolves around that. So I love prep. I actually be a lot more lost whenever I'm not in prep. And that's where my struggles come, because I'm like, what's my, like, it sounds dramatic, but like, what's my purpose right now? Like, what am I actually doing? So I struggle outside of prep. When I get in prep, I'm like, let's fucking go. Like, this is my life. This is what I love. This is what I like doing. So I'm excited to be there. And I use it as like a tool to distract me and take me away from everything else, basically.
Yeah, I get that fully. Like, you want it to be something that's inherently positive. And you're like, as you say, I think a lot of like athletes, bodybuilders, obviously they struggle with the not prepping bit, and that's where bodybuilding, when you're trying to put muscle on, is like won and lost. Like this you can guide yourself in for whatever period of time, 16 weeks, but it's like the other whatever many weeks that is, a lot, or 48, or no, it's not 30.
Yeah.
That's the bit that's going to like actually define how successful you are the next
Exactly.
age a lot of the time. But yeah,
Yeah, it's like two different preps. You have like your show prep and then you have your off-season prep. It's just a different type of prep, which is what I've come to realize and learn. Um, for me, off-season and growth is actually a harder type of prep because you're prepping for prep, but to me, it's a lot more difficult. It's longer, it's slower. You're not seeing immediate results. You're actually getting fatter and bigger before you're actually looking good. So you're having to get your head around that as well. There's hormonal changes. Your whole mindset is completely different. You are still striving for a goal, but it's a lot more long term. So, mind wise, off season and growth, that growth phase for me, you need to be a hell of a lot stronger. For me, that is a hell of a lot worse than prep. But it's one of those things, like we choose this life. And I remember putting something up on Instagram recently, like you chose this. Do you know what I mean? No one's forcing you to do this or to do bodybuilding. And if you find yourself waking up every day and being miserable and thinking like, oh shit, like this is the fucking worst, then you shouldn't really be doing bodybuilding. You're not in it for the right reasons. If that's how you feel majority of the time, we're gonna get days like that every now and again. But if you feel like that every single day, then it's probably not for you.
That's why I think like bodybuilding is an analogy for life because it rings so true, and deep, but like that feeling of like when you go out and go, fuck me, even another day of prep, if you're feeling like with your work, with your relationships, like it's something you actually have to question, like, why am I in this?
Yeah. Exactly. And it's not for everybody. And that's fine. Just because you don't want to be competitive, you want to bodybuild, but you don't want to go on stage, you don't want to do this. Or even if you don't want to be a bodybuilder anymore, like that's totally fine. It's not for everybody and it doesn't make you any worse than anybody else. It just means you have a different choice and a different drive. But yeah, it's definitely one thing. Like a lot of, girls would come to me on Instagram that want to get into bikini and to being, competitive and doing bodybuilding shows. And it's one thing that I always talk about to them. You need to be sure that this is the life that you want, because it's nearly like once you enter this life, there's no real going back, because it alters you physically and it alters you mentally, especially if you're assisted. And that's what I say to these girls, you need to be careful because your eating habits change, your mindset changes, your body changes, and it's not something that you just step away from like a light switch and the next day you're back to who you were. So you need to be all in, really.
No, and I'll have a go at it kind of situation with this one.
Yeah.
I'm always very conscious of time, people's attention spans as well. So I want to ask you these couple of questions. Okay. So what's been the best bit of bodybuilding for you? Doesn't have to be the even physical part of it, or what's been I suppose one of the things you dislike the most?
Okay. Best thing for me is probably like the people that I've met.
Agreed. Yeah.
So I mentioned there, like, previously at the start of the call that I sort of like when I entered bodybuilding and I got on that stage at First Timers, I was literally like this like I love this, like I thrive in this environment, and I finally found something that I was actually good at. Whenever people say to you like, what's your talent? And you're like, I don't actually feel like I have any talents. Like I was always that person. I was just like, I just work and like raise children. I feel like I don't have a talent. Like I'm not good at anything in particular. So for me, I was like, oh my God, I finally found something that I'm good at and that I really actually enjoy while being good at it. Yeah. And that is a lot to do with the people that I met. So yeah, for me, that's really changed. People who I have in my circle and that I spend time with now are very different to what it was, a year or two ago. And I have met, some of the people that I'm closest to now, I'd be closer to than people that I've grown up with or that I've known for years, because you finally, you enter this like circle and it's nearly like, a family, like a community of people that are so like you, and they think like you, and they enjoy the same things as you, and they have the same drivers, and the same kind of goals. And not only that, but they understand your lifestyle because they also share that lifestyle. So you don't have to explain yourself or anything like that. So it's the people that I've met, definitely. It's made me a better person. It's made me feel more like accepted and happy, really. As well, it sounds pretty gay, like, but But yeah, it's definitely the people that I've met. 100%. The people that you meet within this community is just amazing.
Easily my highlight of it all as well. Not to jump on board, like, but that is again, the reason that I do this. It's a massive driver for me. It's made a massively positive impact on my life. Mm-hmm. Like I'm sure I'd said last week as well. I'd put up just to check this out if you are watching still. basically the meetup. I'd seen a lot of exhibitions and stuff that used to go on in the past, and it's been a long time since that's been there. So that's something
Yeah.
I'm like wanting to push, because called Irish Bodybuilding Society. So just keep your eye out, because over the next couple of months, we're going to have just get everybody together, guest speakers, guest posers, trade stalls, all that sort of stuff, and actually just have a good training session and meet up with like-minded people, because to me, that's like the foundation of the sport when it comes
Oh
down
yeah,
to it.
totally. It really is. And that's the foundation of it. And that I think that's how the industry will remain successful and, remain top and in the limelight, because and it will grow, is if all of those people, get together and continue, to be together and work together and do these things and do these events. I know so many people, messaged me about the thing that you put up, about this event. So loads of people want to go. It's great. Everyone can touch base, can link in, train together, talk, whatever. And I think that's what people need, because yourself, like bodybuilding can be a lonely sport sometimes. It's all well and good when you're backstage behind the show and you're jumping around with all the rest of the bikini girls and it's great crack and you're like, oh, you're my best friend. But, when you leave that show, you come home, and you get a tan, you get a shower, you scrub off the tan, and then you sit there and you're like, what now? You're alone. You're faced with this meal plan. You're faced with training the next morning, and nobody's by your side. You're not jumping around for a meal out after the show or seeing everybody or, pumping up. It's not how it is. It is extremely lonely. It's not like you're in a team, So to get together more often, I think, is what these athletes need. And, it'll definitely will drive success, I think, anyway.
That's the plan. And then to finish, Aimee, what is the best piece of advice that you've ever been given?
Oh my God, I feel like I've been given loads of advice, in particular from like athletes and Brian's team. Like the amount of advice I've been given from people has been amazing. But probably one that stands out for me would be from John, really. So I remember the first time that I trained with John, and it was him that said to me, you're not training properly. You need to train to failure, and you need to train to true failure. And he just said those words, you need to go to that place. And I was literally like, I hadn't heard this before, you probably have millions of times, but for me, that was very new, way of thinking. And it was like a new term. And he said, you need to go to that place, however you get to it, I don't give a shit, but you need to go to that place. And that is where you push, and that is how you will train properly and train to failure. And I swear every single session that I train now, all I can hear is like John's voice in my head, like, go to that place, go to that place, go to that place. And it's worked, physique took off, and that's how we do it. But not only in training, in prep in general and an off season in general, you wake up, there are difficult days, there are dark times where you're like, oh my God, like what the frig am I doing? Like why, you question your life choices and why you're even doing this sometimes. And then you just need to go to that place. Basically, get your head in the game, focus, push through the pain, push through the hunger, push through the force feeding and the gagging oats down, and just go to that place and fucking get it done, like, basically.
Class. That was really good. Honestly, Aimee, I thought that was really good insight, because I want a competitor on there that's very active, that's still coming up in the game, and has like a huge potential in it. So
Yeah.
and I think there's a lot of things to take home, like for male competitors too, but especially for the female classes there, bikini. If people want to find you, where can they contact you? Because obviously you're coaching as well.
Yeah. So Instagram is basically the best one to get me on. So it's just Ace by Aimee Edwards on Instagram. You'll find me.
So give Aimee a wee look up. And then obviously in terms of, if you want to catch me up, follow Neil Rennie Coaching, but also please subscribe to the channel, give it a like, a share, subscribe, just try and get it going. And then, as I say, keep an eye out for the Irish Bodybuilding Society. That's what I'm running with anyways, as well. There'll be a meet up in the next sort of, probably, I'd imagine after the PCA Ireland show, because I forget about energy and a few oats back in me. So
get a wee refeed back in and be ready.
We want to refeed for that one. Like, so. No, that's it, guys. I appreciate it. Obviously, we're back next week, another episode. Keep following along.